Every time we enter the digital world, we put on an invisible mask, an avatar in a game, a social media profile, an anonymous comment. These are all manifestations of our virtual self, sometimes strikingly different from our real one. What happens to the human psyche when it acquires a digital shell? Why does a quiet office worker turn into an aggressive troll, and a withdrawn teenager become the life of an online community? The digital mask is not just a set of pixels or a chosen name. It is a psychological tool that allows us to explore the boundaries of our own personality in a safe space. When the physical body and social status remain off-screen, amazing opportunities for self-expression open up. However, that same anonymity can become a catalyst for the darker sides of our nature. Behind the digital shield, we feel invulnerable, and therefore, free from responsibility and social norms. The history of masks begins long before the digital age. Ancient ritual masks allowed shamans to embody spirits, and actors of ancient theater to transform into gods and heroes. Medieval carnivals created a special space of freedom, where social boundaries were erased under the protection of a mask. The Venice Carnival, with its famous Bauta masks, allowed aristocrats and commoners to interact as equals, concealing their status and true intentions. The mask always performed a dual function. It concealed and simultaneously liberated a person's true essence. It protected from social consequences and offered the opportunity to try on new roles, inaccessible in ordinary life. It's surprising how this ancient psychological mechanism migrated into the digital space. Modern avatars and nicknames have inherited the functions of carnival masks, but have acquired new capabilities. Unlike physical masks, digital images can transform instantly, be created in unlimited quantities, and exist simultaneously in different virtual spaces. If carnival was a temporary phenomenon, then the virtual mask is constantly available. The psychological effect of this is amplified. We can maintain alternative identities for years, develop them, and invest emotions and resources in them. The digital mask becomes not just a temporary role, but a full-fledged part of the personality. What happens in our consciousness when we hide behind a digital mask? The psychological mechanisms underlying virtual anonymity reveal deep aspects of human nature. A key process here is de-individuation, a state in which a person loses their sense of self-identity and personal responsibility. In the digital space, this effect is amplified by the absence of physical presence and non-verbal cues. We don't see the interlocutor's reaction, don't feel social pressure, and stop perceiving ourselves as a specific person with a certain reputation. Online disinhibition is another phenomenon explaining the transformation of behavior online. When the barriers of social control weaken, suppressed desires and emotions break free. Introverts find it easier to communicate, and hidden aspects of personality get a chance for expression. However, this same freedom can lead to aggression and a violation of ethical norms. Projection plays a special role in virtual interaction. We unwittingly attribute traits and motives to other users based on our own expectations. An anonymous interlocutor becomes a screen for our projections, which often leads to distorted perception. The avatar functions as a psychological boundary between the real and virtual self, allowing for experimentation with identity in a safe space. This is a kind of personality laboratory where one can express qualities suppressed in ordinary life. Imagine you go online and put on an invisible mask. What happens to your behavior at that moment? The online disinhibition effect is a psychological phenomenon where anonymity removes typical social constraints. Suddenly, we say and do things we would never allow ourselves to do in real life. This effect has two sides. a light one and a dark one. On one hand, disinhibition allows people to be sincere. In anonymous support groups, people openly discuss problems they are ashamed to talk about, even with loved ones. Teenagers struggling with self-identity find communities where they can be themselves without fear of judgment. Research shows that for introverts and people with social anxiety, anonymous platforms become a lifeline, allowing them to overcome communication barriers. However, the same freedom from social constraints generates toxicity and aggression. In news comments, gaming chats, and anonymous forums, people allow themselves to use insults they would never utter while looking someone in the eye. Cyberbullying, trolling, hate speech. These are all manifestations of the dark side of disinhibition. It is noteworthy that even law-abiding citizens can display surprising cruelty online. Psychologists explain this by the lack of immediate feedback. We don't see the pain we inflict on others with our words. A virtual avatar is not just a digital shell, but a powerful tool for self-exploration. Behind the monitor screen, we get a unique opportunity to explore the shadow sides of our personality, which remains suppressed in real life. The psychologist Carl Jung called such hidden aspects the shadow, a part of our unconscious that we deny or overlook. In a safe virtual space, this shadow can be explored without the risk of social rejection. A shy person tries on the role of a leader in an online game. A perfectionist allows themselves to make mistakes under a pseudonym, and a conformist expresses unpopular opinions through an anonymous account. One of the most striking examples is the phenomenon of gender switching, when users choose avatars of the opposite sex. Research shows that such an experience often leads to a better understanding of gender issues and the development of empathy. Men playing female characters experience objectification and harassment firsthand, which changes their view on gender equality. Digital avatars are also finding application in therapeutic practice. The avatar therapy method helps patients with mental disorders visualize their problems through virtual characters. In the treatment of schizophrenia, patients create avatars representing their hallucinations, which allows them to gain control over painful experiences. For people with traumatic experiences, the virtual image becomes a safe mediator between trauma and healing. When choosing an avatar online, we don't just create a visual image. We form a tool that influences our self-perception. The Proteus effect, named after the ancient Greek deity capable of changing form, describes a remarkable psychological phenomenon. The characteristics of our virtual embodiment begin to influence our behavior and self-perception. Stanford University studies have shown that people using attractive avatars demonstrate greater confidence in virtual social interactions, which then transfers to real life. Moreover, users with tall, athletic avatars show greater persistence when solving complex tasks. The digital image becomes a kind of mirror, reflecting not only who we are, but also who we aspire to become. This is particularly evident in virtual worlds and online games, where the avatar often embodies an idealized version of the user. It is noteworthy that these effects persist even when we consciously understand the conventionality of the virtual image. Our brain subconsciously identifies with the digital representation, leading to profound changes in self-esteem. For teenagers who are forming their self-identity, this effect can have particularly strong consequences. The virtual image becomes a space for experimenting with identity and self-discovery. In anonymous online communities, social dynamics differ fundamentally from real-world interactions. When people hide behind digital masks, group processes acquire unique characteristics, sometimes constructive, sometimes destructive. Anonymous forums like image boards demonstrate a paradoxical combination of absolute freedom and strict group regulation. Without attachment to a real identity, users are judged solely by the content of their messages, creating a meritocracy of ideas where status is determined by contribution, not external factors. At the same time, anonymity intensifies group polarization, a psychological phenomenon where collective discussion radicalizes participants' initial views. Moderate opinions are displaced, and the group moves toward extremes, forming echo chambers, closed informational spaces where only consonant views circulate. In pseudonymous communities, where users operate under permanent nicknames, a different social structure emerges. Reputation becomes a valuable resource, and a system of statuses and hierarchies develops. Users invest in their digital identities, which increases accountability for published content. It is noteworthy that even without revealing real names, such communities are capable of creating strong social ties and effectively self-organizing to achieve common goals. The virtual space has created a unique platform for experimenting with gender identity. The phenomenon of gender switching, when users choose avatars of the opposite sex, reveals the deep psychological mechanisms of our attitude towards gender roles. Studies show that up to 30% of gamers regularly play as characters of the opposite sex, with men doing so more often than women. The motives for such a choice are diverse, from simple curiosity to a deep need to explore suppressed aspects of one's personality. For many, this becomes a window into a world of different social experiences. A man playing a female character in an online game often encounters uninvited attention, compliments, and harassment, an experience unavailable in real life. Women who choose male avatars note that their opinions are treated with greater respect, and their competence is less often questioned. Such experiences often lead to a transformation of views on gender issues. One participant in a Stanford University study admitted, "After a month of playing a female character, I started noticing sexism that I simply hadn't seen before." This experience of digital reincarnation becomes a powerful tool for developing empathy. Psychologists note that prolonged use of an avatar of the opposite sex can contribute to a deeper understanding of the social problems faced by representatives of the opposite gender. Virtual reality opens new horizons, not only for entertainment, but also for psychological assistance. Avatar therapy is becoming a revolutionary method in working with various mental disorders. At the University of London, a program was developed for patients with schizophrenia, where they create digital embodiments of their auditory hallucinations. By interacting with these avatars under the guidance of a therapist, patients learn to control anxious states and establish boundaries with the voices that persecute them. Statistics show a reduction in symptom intensity in 70% of program participants. In the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, virtual reality allows for the recreation of traumatic situations in a safe environment. Veterans of military operations gradually immerse themselves in simulations of combat scenarios, which helps to desensitize traumatic memories. For people with social anxiety, virtual avatars become simulators for communication skills. In a protected space, they practice conversations, presentations, and conflict situations, gradually transferring the acquired experience into real life. This method is especially effective in working with children with autism. The predictability of virtual characters and the ability to control the intensity of social interaction create ideal conditions for learning communication skills. Avatars also help in therapy for phobias, from fear of heights to fear of public speaking. Patients gradually approach the object of fear while maintaining a sense of safety and control. In the digital world, where anonymity has become the norm, complex ethical questions arise. When we put on a digital mask, does our responsibility for our actions change? Virtual space has created a unique paradox. Technically, we can hide behind an avatar, but morally, we remain the same people with the same ethical obligations. Anonymity online is not an indulgence for irresponsible behavior, but a privilege that requires conscious awareness. The digital mask is often used as a tool for manipulation. Fake accounts, bots, and deepfake technologies blur the line between the real and the fictitious. A person can create an entire army of virtual personalities to promote certain ideas or distort public opinion. Such practices raise questions about digital honesty and the need for critical thinking in an age of information overload. The balance between freedom and responsibility becomes a key ethical problem. On the one hand, anonymity protects political activists in repressive regimes, allows people from marginalized groups to speak out, and ensures the safety of victims of violence. On the other hand, the same anonymity becomes a shield for purveyors of hatred and disinformation. Information hygiene requires us to take a conscious approach to the creation and perception of digital identities. We must regularly ask ourselves, what parts of myself am I projecting into virtual space? How do my online actions affect others? Do my virtual manifestations align with my values? The ethical use of anonymity implies adopting the same moral constraints as in real life. The digital mask should not become an excuse for actions we would not commit under our own name. We stand at the threshold of a new era, where the boundaries between the physical and virtual worlds are becoming increasingly blurred. Metaverses are not just improved social networks or gaming platforms, but full-fledged digital ecosystems in which our avatars acquire unprecedented depth and significance. In these immersive spaces, virtual personalities evolve from simple visual representations to complex digital twins, reflecting not only appearance but also behavioral patterns, preferences, and even emotional reactions. Motion capture technology, facial expressions, and neurointerfaces allow avatars to accurately reproduce our microexpressions and gestures, making virtual interaction indistinguishable from real life. The psychological consequences of such deep immersion can be both positive and alarming. On the one hand, humanity gains the opportunity to overcome physical limitations, disability, geographical isolation, social barriers. On the other hand, there is a risk of identity boundaries blurring when virtual life becomes more attractive and fulfilling than real life. The phenomenon of the digital twin is a particularly interesting direction of development. This is not just an avatar, but a semi-autonomous digital entity capable of existing and acting in virtual space even in our absence, based on our behavioral models. Such twins can continue to work, communicate, and make decisions, creating the effect of constant presence in several realities simultaneously. We are moving towards a world where a person will be able to lead parallel social lives in various virtual dimensions, each with its own rules, opportunities, and identities. Our journey through the psychology of virtual avatars is nearing its end, but the field itself continues to develop rapidly. Digital masks have become an integral part of modern life, transforming our understanding of personality and social interaction. So, what have we learned about this phenomenon? Virtual avatars are not just entertainment or a communication tool. They represent a continuation of the ancient human need for self-expression through alternative identities. However, in the digital world, this practice has acquired unprecedented scale and depth of impact on the psyche. Healthy integration of the virtual and real self requires awareness. We must understand which aspects of our personality we project into the digital space and what consequences this entails. Anonymity is a privilege that grants freedom, but demands responsibility. To achieve psychological balance, it's important to remember: virtual avatars should complement our personality, not replace it. They can serve as a space for experimentation, a means of self-discovery, and a tool for overcoming limitations. But the foundation of identity must remain whole. In the future, as the boundaries between the real and virtual become even more blurred, the ability to consciously manage our digital manifestations will become a key skill for psychological well-being. We are not just users of technology, we are architects of new forms of human existence.